one side up. Luke 22, 25 to 27. In my last study, I honed in on the only occasion when Jesus said, "Learn from me," and the surprising reason he gave, "For I am gentle and humble in heart." It's a lesson his first disciples took a while to get their heads around, so much so that Jesus decided to do a show and tell for them the night before he was crucified, washing his disciples' feet. Let's turn to the only record of this, which is in John 13. Just as in Matthew 11, 25 to 30, here in John 13, 3 to 5, Jesus is depicted as being almighty, yet incredibly meek. Jesus knew that the Father had entrusted everything into his hands, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, picked up a towel and wrapped it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with a towel which was wrapped around him. In Jesus' day, because the roads were dusty and people wore sandals, it was common practice to wash guests' feet when they first entered someone's home. Since foot washing was considered a lowly task, it was done by a slave. In the world of the first century, one's life was structured within a social hierarchy. The powerful and the privileged would be at the top, while the lowest of the low would be assigned the most menial of chores, such as foot washing. At the Last Supper, the meal is already underway, and the feet of those dining are still unwashed. Obviously, it hasn't entered the heads of any of the apostles that this service should be provided, for come on, you don't wash the dirty feet of your peers. Then the unmistakable, or rather the unthinkable, happens. The air is electric as the master of the 12 gets up from the table and starts to wash his disciples' feet. This is an act that announces one's social status. In those days, it's unheard of for a man of a higher position to wash the feet of those beneath him. In fact, Jesus has become his disciples' slave. It appears that the first to have their feet washed put up with it in an appalled and embarrassed silence. When it's Peter's turn, he does his foot-in-mouth routine, challenging Jesus' inappropriate behaviour and refusing point-blank to have his feet washed. When he finishes washing his disciples' feet, Jesus attaches an explanation to the action in John 13, 12 to 17. Do you realise what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. If therefore I, Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger, and the Greek word is apostolos, meaning one who is sent, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Sobering words for the disciples to take in, let alone put into practice. However, if we turn to Luke's portrayal of that evening, chapter 22, we discover in verse 24, one of them had recovered so much he was able to discuss who would be the greatest in the pecking order of God's kingdom. They're still muddle-headed social climbers worried about status in the new regime their master is setting up. How slow to learn. We hear echoes of an earlier scramble while the disciples are following Jesus on his final journey to Jerusalem. The Zebedee boys, James and John, approached Jesus, who has just warned them that he will be condemned to death in the city. What they ask him leaves us thinking how much they have still to learn. We read in Mark 10:35, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" They answered, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." The remaining 10 apostles seem just as thick-headed, for they are indignant with James and John for trying to grab the best seats before them. Jesus calls the bickering 12 together to explain that his kingdom runs along completely different lines from the dominions of this world. Let's return to the Last Supper account in Luke 22:25, where Jesus stresses this yet again to his disciples. "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. For who is greater, the one who reclines at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as the one who serves." What a lesson in humility. In the face of conventions to do with social status, Jesus is presenting a downside-up kingdom. This is a lesson Peter never forgot. And I was just wondering this morning whether this experience had prompted him to be asked at the end of his days to be crucified upside down. A lesson Peter never forgot, one that he considered of the utmost importance to pass on. In his first letter, 5:5, he instructs us, "All of you, clothe yourselves with humility towards one another." The verb he uses appears nowhere else in the New Testament. It describes the action of putting one garment over others and tying it with a knot, like an apron or towel. Jesus' foot washing had been indelibly printed on his memory. Jesus, Lord and Master of all, how amazing that you sum up your life on earth in these words: "I am among you as the one who serves." Help us to grow as willing servants in your kingdom.